Welcome to On Second Thought, a television show produced locally here in Santa Maria that asks the question, are you losing control of your government? I have a few words of advice today for President George W. Bush as he goes into his administration. Congratulations on getting your nominees confirmed. I wouldn't kowtow to any liberal, lackey, liberal Democrat types that are saying you're too tough. You got elected, you're the president, and you should take full charge of the presidential duties. But I hope in the process of doing so, you will create a society in America that is more free of drug war victims than the last 8 years has shown us. I hope that if Mr. Ashcroft, for some reason, decides to resign his position 2 or 3 years from now, you will demonstrate that bipartisanship that you will alliterated, that you wanted to have in your administration by selecting or trying to nominate some Democrats. Pick a libertarian, and I would suggest to you, for Attorney General, you choose Ed Clark, a retired lawyer who worked for a major oil company in Los Angeles, who was also a presidential candidate in 1980, the only libertarian to get nearly 1 million votes in 20 years, a very astute attorney. He would make a great Attorney General. And Steve Cubby for the drug czar. That's just, I throw out there, if you really want to bring in all the people. But keep in mind, you didn't even get 50% of the vote, but neither did ex-President Clinton. And I think we've arrived at an era where there are so many disenfranchised people, so many people that refuse to vote, so many that won't vote for a major party candidate. It behooves you, Mr. President, to choose somebody from a third party ranks to be in a cabinet position. And the Libertarians have grabbed more congressional votes than any other political party since the Socialists in the 1920s. In 80 years, there has never been a third party, except for the Libertarian Party, that have grabbed as many congressional votes nationwide as the Libertarian Party has. So if you truly are interested in widening and bringing everybody into the cabinet to be represented, I suggest you nominate those two libertarians in the future. And as for Mr. Clinton's passing, I can only say good riddance. You came in with the promise of you are going to have the most ethical administration, and it was the most disgusting from an ethical point of view administration of any that I can remember in my 50+ years of living in this country. I hope that the new administration will bring in an era of less government. Now, going on, if any of you surf around and you happen to go in on the DNC, the National Democratic Committee website, you'll notice that right before President Clinton went out of office, the only issue they were asking is, can President Clinton broker a peace agreement between the White House pets, Mr. Boots, and whatever that dog's name is, or the cat's name is. Apparently he failed to even get a peace treaty between the White House pets. And I'm not joking. You thought I was joking. That's what was on the DNC national website. And I think it sort of epitomizes how little the Clinton administration did to make a better world. I think we've reached a point where we need to move on. We have some local issues here in Santa Maria, in Orcutt specifically. We have an election, believe it or not, and you thought the elections were over, and here comes March 6th, and the Orcutt residents are going to vote on, number one, whether to create an Orcutt Community Service District, and number two, who the first 5 members of that board should be. And this is a watershed event, and I hope all of those of you who are watching, live in Orcutt, will take close attention to the Pioneer and its issue that comes out around February 15th. And tune into this show. We may have most of the candidates before the election. Today, we're going to have several of those candidates, and it's important because usually a community service district, given a little time, evolves into creating a incorporated city. And this will be a watershed event for those living in the unincorporated area we generally refer to as Orcutt. So with that, I'd like to bring you one of our first guests here today, and I hope you will pay attention. There's no programmed questions here, and it's going to be sort of a freestyle, and you have a chance to see what one of the candidates is doing and why he's running. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned. Welcome back to On Second Thought. I hope you liked that quote from President George Washington. On second thought, we continually ask the question, are you losing control of your government? And we have with us now Robert Meissner. Welcome to the show, Robert Meissner.
Meissner.
Meissner, I'm sorry, Robert Meissner. You can tell this is unrehearsed. But we asked the question, are you losing control of your government? And here is about to be created another level of government called the Orcutt Community Service District. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the election is March
7th.
March 7th, coming up here very soon. How long have you lived here, Robert?
I've lived here since 1977.
Okay, and why are you running for this new position that's going to be created?
Yeah, I've been involved in recreation here like most people in Orcutt. You know, when your kids hit a point in the schools, for me it was 3rd grade. My son was at Patterson Road School. And you know, one day you walk in there and you sign your kid up for a basketball team, in my experience, and they tell you, we have no coaches. So if you're a volunteer-minded person, you volunteer for the job and they make you a coach, and I've just been in recreation ever since. And it's gone through a lot of different phases. So I started coaching and got involved that way. And 7 years later, you know, when my son was out of the basketball program, the Orcutt Youth Basketball Group changed format, and somehow or other, you know, they needed someone to volunteer to answer the phones, is the way it actually started. And I raised my hand and said, sure, I'll take the parents' complaints, and next thing I knew, I was president of Orcutt Youth Basketball. And then, you know, I learned real quickly that the recreation groups in Orcutt work on a volunteer basis. You know, they're all volunteers. You know, the volunteers open the gyms and they set up the fields, they train the coaches, they do everything. And it's very, very difficult to get enough volunteers. And that was the first thing I learned, was there was really never enough volunteers. So we ended up having to expand that program and recruit more volunteers, and it grew so quickly once we got that done. We went from 400 to 600 kids in 2 years. The program became year-round. Next thing we knew, the Orcutt School District let us have the gym for the summer, and 600 more kids wanted to play in the summertime, and we were just off for, you know, a huge expansion that still hasn't stopped.
And all that run by volunteers?
All by volunteers.
So it didn't cost the school district anything?
It cost the school district nothing. The only cost was in, we've always had a mentoring program in Orcutt Youth Basketball where we pay the kids to be scorekeepers, and then as they get older they can train to become paid referees. And so all the money goes to those areas, you know, to buy supplies. Some of the gyms charge us rentals, but mostly not.
Well, that's pretty nice. So why, after all this background and working as a volunteer, are you in favor of the creation of the Orcutt Community School District?
I am in favor of the creation of the Orcutt Community Service District. I'm entirely in favor of it.
Why?
Well, what I learned is that there's a large, there's an evolution of recreation groups in a community. You know, you can run a community on volunteers for a certain period of time, and at some point, the community becomes different. You know, the character changes. And you know, way back when Dr. Garvin was still running the Orcutt School District, there was a point where we all got together, all of the league directors, and I think there were 14 of them at the time. And each one of those youth groups, that was soccer, baseball, lots of baseball groups, everybody was there. And we all had a consensus that, you know, the volunteers could do only so much. And besides that, the volunteers are becoming harder to come up with. We're getting very busy. You know, more people, the demographics are changing. 2 people work. You know, just it's harder to find people with the time because it takes a lot of time. So there's a turnover in the management of the groups, and every time you turn over the management, the group might take, you know, a dip downward in the quality of services that it provides.
So you're hoping by creation of the community service district you will maintain a certain level of service?
Well, I'm personally in favor of the Orchid Community Service District for two different reasons. A, it will give us an agency that can acquire land and develop it for recreation purposes. And B, and to me just as important, or if not more important, it'll give the creation of an agency so that we in Orchid can have recreation coordinators. Mm-hmm. You know, all around us there are community service districts, there are school districts, there are Santa Maria Parks and Recreation, and these people all have the option, because they are agencies and entities, that they can hire recreation coordinators and professionals to develop programs, work with the kids, work with adults. You know, one of the other things that happened at that time was my son and I got involved refereeing basketball. And as that evolved, and now I referee all over the county at different levels, you know, it becomes obvious that the different quality levels of recreation are very, very clear. And Santa Maria Parks and Recreation, for example, does a great job, because they have trained professionals, you know, people that go to
conferences to learn how to do better?
They go to college, they go to Cal Poly, they get a degree in recreation administration. I spent one semester at Cal Poly a year and a half ago, and I took 3 courses in recreation administration. And I learned, you know, there's a lot of stuff that the volunteers just don't know. Mm-hmm. In the case of our group, we were very, very lucky. You know, we had one of the other candidates, Mr. Ward, was involved with our group for 27 years. And his partner, Dave Silva, was involved for 25 years. And so they were very lucky. But the other groups now are, you know, the people that manage them last a few years. Mm-hmm. And then they move on. They get tired. They get burned out.
Yes, that happens.
Parents' complaints is what pretty much burns people out. But, you know, we all want the programs. But I learned while I was at Cal Poly that, you know, recreation isn't just about the kids' programs. It's about all of us. You know, there's recreation adult programs. There are so many programs that we don't have in Orchid because we don't have anyone creating and presenting the programs.
But isn't there a county agency that could come in and do this?
No, there's not. There's no county agency that does this at the time. The Santa Barbara County Parks Department is strictly about parks maintenance.
Okay.
And it is not in their mission statement to become a manager of active recreation. Okay. That's left to the communities to do.
I see. How much do you think this is going to increase the local, say the average taxpayer in Orchid District on their taxes by the creation of the Community Service District? Do you have any idea?
Well, there's only a minimum number that I think most people are quoting, $125 per household, something in that neighborhood. But really, I don't focus on the numbers as much. You know, there's so many people that have been involved in this, and we have people that are better than I am at tracking all the number details. My own position is more a little different than that. I don't think it's going to be expensive. You know, our community has voted for the school upgrade for the Orchid School District. Recently, we voted to build a new high school. I believe the community is willing to move to improve their quality of life. And I don't think it's going to cost very much, quite frankly. And I know that there's been statements made that there's no limit and all that kind of stuff, and it can go more expensive, but it's really up to the voters to determine every expenditure.
Well, recently, didn't the limitations of Paul Gand, Howard Jarvis's Prop 13 that passed 20 years ago, wasn't that recently repealed? So now, in fact, there could be no limits to where this could impact taxes-wise. Is that not true?
No, I don't think that's true. There's a clear per household. This is as much as it's going to, as the taxpayers will be charged for
the first year anyway.
Well, and and then there's a percentage for the
2%
inflation.
increment,
yeah,
I think, every
2%
year.
incremental for inflation.
Okay. So the purpose, in your view, of the community service district is mainly to maintain youth programs. I understand there's to create a senior center water facility in Orcutt, or between the borders of Santa Maria and Orcutt, what we think of as Orcutt.
Yeah.
Is that going to be on the budget of the new district if it's created? Are they going to fund that?
No, at the present time, and my own personal position is that the parameters of the community service district should be strictly recreation, both acquisition of land and development of recreation programs. Senior services, same thing, development of a new senior center and programs for that senior center, and library services.
And library services.
And I would be in favor of that being the entire limit of the community service district. We've discussed it in the roundtable meetings, and we're pretty much in agreement that we're not engineers. Mm-hmm. You know, there's engineers out there that can take care of water. There's engineers that take care of the streets. You know, Santa Barbara County has all those things in place, and I see no reason to duplicate those services and add costs unnecessarily to the taxpayers.
Do you think this is a step towards becoming a city, the city of Orcutt?
I personally don't see that, no. I believe that this is about fulfilling, you know, we have this one hole in Orcutt. We don't have a recreation department. Everything else pretty much gets done.
Okay.
But there's really not a recreation department, and I really think that it's time for that to happen. And the other community service districts that I've researched in our immediate vicinity do the same thing. They just provide recreation services. Isla Vista has it. Vandenberg Village now has it. You know, they're popping up everywhere. And other community service districts with other needs, like Napomo Community Service District, they had a water problem, so they had to develop a district to deal with that. And you know, I think it's set up because, you know, Mr. Braitman, who's the executive director, has been an invaluable advisor to us, and this is the format that you use to set up a community service district.
Okay.
But I think as long as the people in Orcutt vote for people who have no additional agenda and just want these services provided, that's the way to maintain that direction of the community service district.
Sounds like a fair answer. I have one thing. If you were going to, if the district doesn't gel, if the people voted down, what will be your next step?
Yeah, I'm not sure what my next step would be. Probably similar to a bond campaign, you know, wait until time goes by and try again. But some time ago, when we were trying to get all the recreation groups together several years ago, one of the reporters afterwards, you know, in doing that search for the one-liners that they often do, had stuck a camera in my face asking me what will we do if I think the agenda at the time was the bond issue, which resulted in the Lakeview Gymnasium being passed. And they asked me, what will you do if this doesn't pass? And my one-liner was, you know, we can't afford to say no to the kids.
Okay, fair enough.
And now I think enough time has gone by, and you know, we can't afford to say no to not only the kids, but all of us. You know, we all need the improvement in quality of life that a focus on recreation and bringing that to fruition in our lives will do.
Okay. There is one candidate named Don Clever who is advocating a privately financed library. Would you support that? One that would not come under the jurisdiction of the community service district or any district, and be a private library operated open to the public?
You know, recreation isn't just about like playing baseball and active things. It's also passive events, and reading has been one of my pastimes all my life. I'm always at the library every 2 weeks. You know, I would do whatever it takes and whatever Don Clever thinks is a good idea to provide library services. If this doesn't happen, then something else needs to happen, because, you know, the Orcutt Library is well, not only is it just too small and those kinds of things, but what really bothers me there is that the kids in classes normally take field trips.
Mm-hmm.
And in our community, they cannot take a field trip to the library. So we can't take our kids to the library because they don't have enough space to allow the classroom to have a seat somewhere. There's just not enough room. And I think that if we're going to teach reading as a value, we need to provide some kind of a venue for that.
Okay.
And without a good-sized library, it's not possible at the present time. So I would go along with whatever Mr. Clever thinks is the best way to do that if this does not pass.
Okay. If you had to sum it up in 1 minute now and make a closing statement to a potential voter in Orcutt watching here on Channel 22, what would you say to him if you had 1 minute to look at the camera and say, this is why you should vote for me and why you should or should not vote for the district? Go ahead.
I don't know that why you should vote for me is important one way or another. What you should do is vote for the Community Service District. This is the best opportunity we've had in the 23 years that I've been in this community, and I really don't want to see it fail. You know, some of the people that are concerned about the cost, I would ask you to set your pencils aside and vote with your heart. This is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Meissner.
Meissner.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Well, thank you for watching On Second Thought. We have another guest, so don't go away. We'll be back in 2 seconds. Thank you for staying with us here on Second Thought. And we have with us now Maureen Withers. Maureen, welcome to the show On Second Thought. And I'd like to ask you a couple of questions why you're running for the Orcutt Community Service District. Well, first of all, how long have you lived here?
I've lived in the Orcutt area for the last 23 years. I moved, before that I was in the San Fernando Valley, and before that I lived in England.
Wow, you've been around.
I have.
You've been around. What are the important issues in this coming election, which I believe is March
6th?
March 6th. Why are you running, and what's the important issue to you?
Okay, since I've lived here in Orcutt, I think it's a wonderful community to live in. And I came when my children were young teenagers, and they went through the Orcutt schools. They played sports here. And a great change has happened in Santa Maria and Orcutt in the last 23 years. A lot more housing, a lot more retail stores, a lot more traffic, except as far the sports fields and facilities have not changed at all. My grandchildren, I now have grandchildren that are playing here that also are in Orcutt, and they're playing on the same fields and the same facilities that my children did, except they're getting smaller and smaller. Because of the increase in students in the schools and the class reduction, they're putting a lot more modular buildings on the field, so they're smaller, and they have to play from early in the morning, like 7:30 until 5:30 at night. And at basketball, they now have to play on Sundays because there are just too many kids and not enough space. And I think we should do something about it. Apart from that, the library, if you haven't been to the Orcutt Library, it is a tiny little space. You can hardly get in there, and the aisles, two people can hardly move. And it's just not conducive to teaching kids or people to reading. And the senior center, we didn't have a senior center, but 15 years ago, a senior center was built here, and that is also on Orcutt School District property. We don't have our own senior center. The Orcutt School District is wonderful. They allow us to use their fields, they allow the seniors to use their land for the senior center. And it was built, and it was 3 modular buildings to begin with, which was adequate. It's in Old Orcutt.
How long ago was that, Maureen?
That was 15 years ago.
Okay.
And then the senior population is definitely growing. I mean, Orcutt we've got a lot of people here that have lived here all their lives, and a lot of mobile home parks, which are just senior places. Seniors are living longer. So we have more seniors coming. We built 2 more modulars. We've added 2 more modular buildings onto that senior center. But because we're on school district property, we're jammed into that little space, and they need the space. We only have 27 parking spaces. And a lot more people would like to come, but they have to park on the street, and seniors, when they've got limited mobility, they just can't come because they have their little walkers and wheelchairs, or they just can't walk that far. So We really need a new senior center, but there's just nowhere to go. It's important, we realize how important it is now for seniors, for anybody, as far as exercise. So we have a lot more exercise programs at different levels to keep seniors, and not just seniors, it's younger people as well, healthy. That socialization is important. And it's just not big enough for all these things to take place.
Okay, you've made some very valid points. Do you have any idea how much this is going to impact the average homeowner and their property taxes?
Yeah, the first year with the plan, it will be no more than $125, that's per household. And people seem to think that it can go higher, but it can't, because this will be set by the voters on March the 6th, that 125 will be the most. It may not be that much, but that's the absolute limit. And after that, they can just put a 2% cap each year. So the first year, 2% on that will be $2.50 put over the next year, 125. So the next year, it would be 127.50. The next year, it could be 2.5% on that. It may not be necessary. If we create an Orcutt Community Service District, and we either have some land donated or we buy land, depending on what happens. We don't know until we actually get some money. Once we have land, like with the senior center, we definitely, desperately need a new, larger senior center. If we had land, we could then go and get grants. There's a lot of foundations out there that have a lot of money that they like giving to things like that, but we can't go now and say, we've got nothing. Well, actually, we have a very small endowment fund at our senior center, which is maybe $60,000. We can't go and say, we've got $60,000, we have nothing else, we don't know where we're going to put it. They won't give you money, but if you say we have a piece of land and we want to build a senior center and there's some money coming from the community, then a lot of foundations will give you matching funds.
Now, you mentioned foundations and matching funds. I spoke to Don Clever, who's not going to be on today, but he indicated that there's a private individual back east that's willing to give land to create a better privately operated library. So if that happens, and he's been working on it, I guess, for a decade, and he is making some progress, would that make less need to create the service district, or we're still going to need the service district?
I think we're still going to need the service district, because actually I think the libraries, although there is a great, great need for a decent library, I believe that there is some funding available. Once again, it would be easier for the library to get funding if they had a piece of land to put it on. If you have land to put it on, I think that they could get a lot of grants. And like as you said, this private grant. But the same as us, he can't go and say, we want money for a library, but we don't know where to put it. And I think, the same as us, it would be easier to get that money in grants and private donations if you say this is where it's going to be. And the whole idea of, at the moment, our key site that we would really like to put it on is Key Site 30 on Bradley Road and by Amethyst. It's right in the center of Orcutt, very easy access.
Key Site 30 on the Orcutt Road?
It's not, no, not on the Orcutt Road, on Bradley. On Bradley
Road,
sorry,
okay.
Bradley. And that would be a perfect site to put it, and then we could have, that's where the Aqua Center, which has been going for a long time, they've got quite a bit of money. They're going to go in some part there. They're not quite sure where.
Now, they went to the airport district, and I think they got a thumbs down on that Aqua Center.
And this is another possibility that's why Site 30 may not work, because the airport it is on the airport flyover zone, and the airport district just may say, no, you can't do this. But I don't know. We have to get that hurdle when we get there.
So you feel we still need the service district for seniors to create a decent senior center for the youth, to create more youth parks, and how about a cemetery district? Do we have a separate cemetery district in Orcutt, or would that be included under the community service district?
We haven't even thought of cemetery. We just haven't thought of that.
Well, if you create a district and they have responsibilities, once you have a district, it isn't possible that the Santa Maria Cemetery District will say, well, you have your own, you need to not be filling up our cemetery because you've got your own government agency. Would that not then create another responsibility? Yeah, once you've created a community service district, you can take on anything else. To begin with, we just would like to take recreation, like as Bob Meissner said, that other community service districts
they may do water, some do sewage, some do lighting district, some do 2 or 3 of those things. Once we've created it, and we have talked about it, what else do we want to do? Do we want to take on lighting? Do we want to take on the water district? At the moment, we just want to do recreation. And if that is successful, and then if the people come and say, hey, we need our own cemetery district, it's something that we could look into. I mean, once again, we'd have to find land, can't put it, we don't want it around the ball fields. It's something that we could look into. If we want to take the lighting district in time, we could look into that. If we want to take the water district, we could. And we can take anything that we like, but it would have to be voted in by the residents. I mean, we can't just do it. It would still have to be voted in.
You'd still have to get a plebiscite from the people in the district?
Mm-hmm. But we would have something to do these things with. It would just be a...
If you could create the perfect district, how many people do you think would be impacted? How many are in? I really don't know how many people live in the borders of what will be the Orcutt Community Service District. How far out? Does it include Lake Marie?
Yeah, it includes Lake Marie. It's
does it go out to Tanglewood?
No, at the moment it doesn't do Tanglewood.
So
but it could do later.
It could include Tanglewood, which
it could, but at the moment I'm pretty sure it doesn't. There is a plan, and I don't think it does Tanglewood. It just does, from the city borders, does go to Lake Marie and the rest of Orcutt.
So Lake Marie will be included in the Orcutt Community Service District. Tanglewood will not be included. How far south does it go? Way up in the hills?
No, just as far as the building. We did talk about taking it up to the top of the hills, but at the moment it doesn't. It just goes to the end of where the property are. And there are, I think, in the unincorporated, I think there's 11,000 properties and something like 38,000 people or 35,000 people. It's quite a lot.
So there's about 11,000 properties that will get a $100 increment on their property tax bill.
About 125.
11,000, that would create, what, about 1.1 million or $1.2 million for the...
I'm not good at maths.
to operate on. I would think with 1.2 million, you should be able to buy a few properties and have a new sports field.
Well,
who would you vote for if you were not you? If you were going to vote? I should have asked Mr. Meissner the same question. Didn't think of it, sorry. But if you were, you got to vote for 5, right? And my understanding is the 2 that get the least number of votes will have the short term. Is that how it works?
I don't know.
You don't know yet. Who would you vote for if you weren't voting for yourself?
I don't know. I think most of us, those of us that have worked on this thing for the last 2.5 years, I was amazed. I usually I've worked with seniors for a long time. I've been at the Oasis, you know, I'm the director of the Lewis Oasis Senior Centre in Old Orcutt for 6.5 years. Before that, I was 12 years in Guadalupe. So I'm mainly in the senior arena. When we heard about the sports groups getting together and wanting recreation, and there was the possibility, we were talking about Site 30, this was about 2.5 years ago. Actually, Joni Gray called and said, we're having a meeting, but we want senior recreation too, are you interested? So I went to the meeting, there were people from Yo-Yo, there were people from the library, and we all got together and we decided we'd continue these meetings.
Now what's Yo-Yo for the listeners that don't know?
Actually, that's an organization, they have a building on Foster Road, and it's Your Orcutt Youth Organization. And they have youth things there. They have basketball and youth activities there. But that's not very big. And they want something bigger. They want a bigger community center. So we all went to this meeting, and then we have continued with this group. Some fell out, but some kept together for the last 2.5 years. And we've met almost every 2 weeks. And I am very impressed with these people that work for the youth sports. They are an incredible group. I mean, these are people that, I take my grandsons to soccer and just see their teams. But these people put in so much work. They all work full-time jobs, and they put in hours and hours of volunteer work. And the kids that want to play soccer now and the other games, it's just escalating so much, and there's just no room. I think last year, for the first time, children were turned away from soccer because there was just no space, and this is a shame. I mean,
children were turned away from soccer?
Yeah.
In Orcutt?
Yeah, in Orcutt.
Did they go up and sign up in Santa Maria?
I don't know. I don't know what they do, but they were turned away for the first time. And this is going to grow. They have a graph of how the soccer registrations have just grown. It just goes up like that. So this year, probably twice as many are going to be turned away.
Have you seen the map in Joni Gray's office?
Of what?
In the back office, it's got a planned development in the Orchid drainage for I don't know how many hundreds of new homes on about 290 acres. It's the same land they stopped Farmer Adams Brothers Farms. Is that included in the district?
I don't think so.
But if they've already got that zone for future home expansion,
maybe it is. I'm not
shouldn't
sure.
that be included in the district?
Yeah, it definitely should. I mean, they can always change the district, I'm sure.
That's scary though, isn't it, when they can change a district and
It
it
is.
would be cut in and cut out?
into ag land, yeah. It really is. I'm not absolutely
how
sure.
could you protect a farmer or anybody who didn't want to be in the district and say you live on and they say we don't want to be in your district? Could the district just expand and say, well, we're going to include you now?
I don't think so.
So there'd have to be a plebiscite on
I think so.
the local area. But on the vacant land, there's nobody there to plebiscite with.
No.
They don't live in it. So how would they just include it?
I think it's the boundaries are the Orchid plan, you know, the plan that they just did.
The general plan?
Yeah,
for
the
it?
general plan. So it's most of that. And I think it kept to those boundaries.
Now, have you read the feasibility plan?
I haven't read all of it. It's pretty big, but I've read some of it.
Okay. Do you find any objections with anything in there?
No, not really. But I probably haven't read the small print that some people have.
Well, some people have read the whole thing and then are still not sure.
I know.
This is a massive, for a local agency, this is a pretty massive document.
It is.
I didn't even open it. I got to see it last night for the first time. And it reminded me of the congressman in 1912 or 1913 that voted in the principle of the first federal income tax, the concept of, I think it was 1913. Only 2 congressmen actually read the whole bill. It was so thick. Almost all of them voted on what they were told, what was in it. And from that, we have been burdened with a federal income tax ever since, based on political representatives that made a decision on a document they had not read. And I looked at this Orchid thing, and I think, did all these 17 candidates really, because there's 17 of you candidates,
Right.
did you all read this thing? I didn't even open it. I can't vote. I don't live in Orchid, so I can't vote. But the question does trouble me. If you've got people, you're going to elect people who haven't read it, and even some, I talked to one who declined to be on the show. He said, I read it, and I still don't understand it.
Well, some of it.
Who designed that? Did you have an attorney that, after everybody put their input, was there an attorney involved?
Yes, it went to a consultant who did this thing. They'd actually done it some years before for the Orchid Area Advisory Board, and it was the same group that did it. And as they'd already partly done it years before, they said it would be
now who
cheaper to do it.
paid for that?
That was the county paid for that.
County paid for that. Do you know what
County
the cost of taxpayers for that?
Yeah, it was about, oh God, I think they said, I think it was more than 25,000. I think it was about 35,000.
$35,000 just to
do that fiscal feasibility study.
Get the feasibility study.
And that's what they said, that they have paid to have this done. And if we don't form the Orchid Community Service District now, we will not have another chance to do it, because the county is not going to do that again. They have used people's tax money to do that, but they're not going to keep doing it.
The county's saying either do it now or don't do it.
In fact, Joni Gray says this is your only chance if you're going to do this, because the county is not going to put that much money up again.
Do you believe that? Do you believe that they'll just give up if they don't create the Orchid Community Service District? Everybody will just say, okay, we lost, go home, won't play that game anymore, and they'll find some alternative?
They'll try again in a few more years, I'm sure.
That's what I think. Yeah. I don't believe Joni Gray if she says this is, I don't know, I didn't hear her say it, but if she said that, I would not believe that. I've watched school bond issues in Santa Maria where they lost, and they brought it back again, they lost, and they brought it back again, and they lost. And the people kept voting down new taxes, but they kept bringing it back, and finally they squeak it through. I watched this in other states and other communities where I've lived years ago. They just keep bringing it back and pounding away until finally people don't go to vote. So we voted that down.
True.
I ain't got to go vote again.
Yeah, so then the ones that do want it
the ones that do, that push hardest, if you got enough determination, that's usually what carries the day. Who's determined?
I don't know, but I mean, I don't want my tax money spent for a lot of fiscal feasibility studies. In fact, when I heard what it cost, I thought, oh, golly, that is a lot of money to do that. But they did it. So
if we pass it, it's going to cost the people in Orcutt $1.1 to $1.2 million roughly, based on 11,000 properties, assuming they're all assessed the same flat fee, which probably isn't true.
The mobile homes are going to be less. They're going to be 0.69%. So they will be
the mobile homes will be less.
About $80 a year.
$85 per mobile homes.
Yeah, 125.
Well, that's important to some seniors living in mobile homes.
And this is it. Some of those have a really hard time, excuse me, paying their taxes now. Mobile home part rents are not cheap. They come $300–400, and another $80.
Even spread out over a year.
Over a year is quite a lot.
Bite.
And now their medicines are going up, and everything else is going up, and their utilities are going up, and some of them are on very limited incomes, and every other dollar makes a difference to them.
So,
and these people, it is going to be hard.
Do you think they're going to vote no?
I don't know. Some of them.
The seniors in mobile home parks. I mean,
I think a lot of them will, because they simply can't afford it. But I think this is our only chance. You know, I think this is our only chance. And this, I mean, I work at the senior centre, and we absolutely are desperate for a new senior centre. And as seniors grow, we're going to need a senior daycare. There's a lot of people that have Alzheimer's, dementia, and they're at home with their families. There's one in the north end of Santa Maria, but now to get from Orcutt to the north end of Santa Maria takes a lot longer.
Now you're active in the senior group called?
Well, I work at the senior centre, Lewis Oasis Senior Centre.
Right, Lewis Oasis Senior Centre. Has anybody from the center considered going out and going to foundations to get private money donated to do it without government money, so you don't have to create a government entity called the community? You haven't tried that? Because there's a whole book of foundations.
Yeah, there are.
And you can get the book and you can go through. They will help seniors, they will help medical.
They will, but once again, if you've got a piece of land, it's easy. But you can't go out and say, okay, we've got $60,000, we don't have any land, we don't have anything, please give us $1 million. They won't do that. If you've got land, and then they will look at it and say, okay, you've got $60,000, $70,000, you've got the land, now we will help you. We will now give you money towards a building. But you know that the cost of land, and looking at Orcutt, there really isn't much land to build on. There are pieces of land that we've seen, but they're very expensive, and they are not, most foundations do not give you money for land. They will give you money for buildings.
So you'd have to have a committee, a private non-government entity go out and, number one, solicit someone to give the land. Then you'd have to go to the foundations.
Yeah.
I just think, well, that'd be easier, I think, than trying to create a new service district. I mean, it's been a catharsis getting it to this point, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has.
It's been just a major, huge effort. And a lot of people in Santa Maria and out in Lompoc have not a clue that you've even done this.
Oh, I know.
They don't know you're even having an election.
No, they don't.
I was amazed to see there were 17 candidates for 5 positions. That, to me, tells me there's a lot of interest.
Yeah.
In Orcutt,
I was surprised.
So.
And that's why when you ask me who I would vote for, I don't know, but I think those people that have been in this round table and going through this since, for the last 2.5 years, and I've learned a lot. I mean, I just went because, okay, we need a new senior centre, but I didn't mean to get politically involved, but I have learned a lot. I mean, Bob Braitman, as Bob said, with LAFCO, he is absolutely extraordinary. He's given us so much help, and then we had to go to LAFCO and go to all the government agencies, and he's led us through, and we have all learned a lot of things that we would never know.
How about Don Cleaver? He's been working for a long time.
Oh, he has too, Don, and all, yeah.
Is it Don Clever or Don Cleaver?
Clever. And I still call him Cleaver. I shouldn't do that, poor guy.
We're sorry, Don. If you're watching, Don, we apologize, Don. It's Don Clever.
Clever, and he is clever.
Actually, it's Don Juan Clever. His full name is Don Juan Clever.
I think I heard that. And he has worked very, very hard, and he's gone through the whole process with us. And it's not been fun. They've been long, and our leader really is Tammy Rabska-Williams, and she is an amazing gal. She's just dynamite, and she's got 2 kids, and she just wants to do this for the community as a whole. And I think we love this community. We love living in Orcutt. We've got a great school district, but it is going to grow. If we don't do it, and we don't have more fields, and we don't have a better library, and we don't have a better senior centre, in 20 years, it's not going to be the best place to live, because also Santa Maria, I think their fields are being impacted. I
think I've heard people rumbling about kids coming up this past season from Orcutt in registering at an address that's in Santa Maria of an uncle or an aunt or a friend and getting into the Santa Maria program because they couldn't get in the ORCUT program, which I think Mr. Meissner, who was just here, basically said that, and I didn't volunteer it. He volunteered that. So if you had 1 minute to look a voter in the eye right now, Maureen, and give them a couple of reasons to either vote for or against creating the district and to vote for you, what would you tell them if you had 1 last minute?
Okay, I know this also, it seems like a lot of money to have on your taxes. None of us want to be taxed. But if you think of it as it's $125 a year, that works out to about $2.50 a week. And that's the cost of a large bag of potato chips or a 12-pack of Coke. And for that, if you think what we're going to get for it, we're going to get a new senior center, ball fields for the kids, a library, a recreation center. It seems to me that that's kind of a small price to pay, and for the future of Orcutt to keep it the great place that it is. Because I love living in Orcutt. Most people that live in Orcutt love living there, and I hope that we will vote for it now because, as we said, I don't think we will have another chance. We'll be stuck with what we've got for a long time, and the kids, if they don't have active recreation, and the seniors, they're going to get into all sorts of trouble.
Well said. Maureen, thank you so much for being with us on Second Thought, and I hope you watch our show even when you're not going to be a guest on it. We're on Channel 22, and this is not an infomercial. This is a real local television show. Stand by, don't go away. We've got some wonderful guitar music for you, and you will be just so pleased. It'll raise your mood level. And stop thinking about that tax bite on your bill that may be coming down the road with the creation of the Orcutt Community Service District. This is William Wagener on Second Thought saying, stand by, don't go away. Be back in 5 seconds. Thank you for being with us on Second Thought, the show that asks the question, are you losing control of your government? We'll have more from the candidates for the proposed Orcutt Community Service District. But to finish out this episode of On Second Thought, we have Manny Mestes, a professional guitarist and instructor, to mellow you out and bring up your mood level. Manny, do something nice for us. Thank you, Manny. That's wonderful. I really enjoyed that. I hope you've enjoyed that on TV land there. This is William Wagener, host and producer of On Second Thought with Manny Mestes, saying tune back on again here on Channel 22 to On Second Thought. Thank you for being with us today. I hope you enjoyed this.